Hello guys, welcome to my channel. I hope everything's okay in your life. In this video you will find an updated version of series I prepared in the previous years. You're in luck for listening to the explanation because I felt the need to quickly discuss the content of the video. Each video will feature an interview with a class master about either the Succession or Awakening versions of a class. All videos, including the older ones, will be available in the playlist you see on the screen. You can find the link of the playlist in the pinned comment section. The purpose of this video series is to help you understand the basic role of the class within the game. I must clarify that it is not a deeply detailed guide. You will watch an interview in a conversational style aimed at answering the fundamental questions of those interested in playing a class. The class masters featured are experienced players who have dedicated thousands of hours to their class and to the Black Desert Online. You may recognize some and not the others, but unfamiliarity does not make them bad players. All the class masters mentioned have proven themselves in Black Desert Online world. Please be respectful when sharing your thoughts. Enjoy watching. Hello guys, welcome. Today's guest is Azminek. We're going to talk about Shai class. How are you, Alec?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hope you're doing well too.
May you please introduce yourself? Who is Alec? Where are you from? Which server are you playing at?
Well, my name is Alec. I go by Alecos2 on Twitch or Azminek in game. I'm from the US, currently playing on the North American servers, and I've been playing BDO for over 8 years now, and I'm a Shai main.
Thank you. How did you find out the BDO? What caught your interest to stay in BDO?
So I found out about BDO when I was searching for a new game to play back when I was in college. I had been playing MMOs for a lot of my childhood years, and I was just looking for a new one to dig into. And I found some videos and some promotions about Black Desert Online, and it just looked, I mean, honestly, it looked incredible. The active combat play style was really, really cool, something that hadn't really been displayed before, and it really caught my interest. So I gave it a go and really haven't left since.
Thank you. Have you ever taken a break from playing video? If so, what motivated you to come back?
Yeah, I've taken a couple breaks before when I was in my later years of going to school in college. I had to take a break for about a year or so, just because between school, work, and all the other things that were going on in my life, I just didn't really have time to play very much. But once everything had settled down and had some more free time to myself, got back into the game. Had a group of friends that I started playing BDO with, all hopped back in, and so we all started playing again together with our old accounts. Yeah, I mean it's still by far the most in-depth combat system, and I've always been a real big fan of any PvP content, as well as I've always been a fan of the grinding styles of MMOs, and so it's just, yeah, it just caught my interest once again, and I've never really stopped it since.
Thank you. How long have you been playing the class you're currently playing? I mean the Shai. Have you tried any other classes?
So I've been playing Shai since her release, which was back in 2019. Originally, I did play Wizard when Black Desert initially was released in North America and EU, but I played that up until Shai, and then when Shai came out, I switched to her and never really stopped. She's always been my main since then. But I have played some Succession Nova when that class was released. I had her tagged. I more recently played Scholar for quite a bit as my new tag, but Shai has always been the main focus. I do pretty much all of my PvE grinding on her. Same thing with all PvP.
Thank you. So what sets the class you play apart from the other classes? What is the special thing in Shai?
Shai has a pretty unique playstyle, consisting of a lot of buff and debuff management on yourself and allies, as well as enemies either in PvE or PvP. She also has much fewer attacking skills, as well as a moving hitbox for the attacks. With those fewer attacking skills, she has short cooldowns on all of them, which makes it a lot more active choosing of which skill best is used for that given scenario. So like we have a couple skills that are forward guard. So if you need to tank some really big hits, you're able to use those right exactly when you need them, rather than hoping that they land in that skill combo, that kind of thing. There's just a lot of flexibility that other classes don't really have, because other classes will do a lot of skill A, then skill B, then skill C, then skill D, and then maybe go back to B, and then continue to skill E, skill F, etc., like that. Shai doesn't really have that.
Thank you. Is your class evasion or damage reduction, or both playable, and why?
Specifically speaking, Shai doesn't really have one designation of either evasion or damage reduction. However, in PvP for uncapped scenarios, you should 100% go full evasion. We just do not do enough damage to have like an offensive AP build in uncapped scenarios, and so the full evasion build for a DP set is what Shai should be going with. Now in PvE, DR is damage reduction is the best option, but that's just in general for all PvE content.
Thank you. What is your current gear score? Do you rush your gear progress, or do you go with the flow when it comes to gear progression?
I'm currently 731 gear score. I have always been relatively slow in gearing up compared to all of my peers and all my friends. I've always sort of been like that. I've never been one to like truly spend 20 hours a day just grinding, trying to get that one extra gear score or that next big upgrade. I've always very much been a go with the flow kind of gear progression style. I try to buy as much gear as I can rather than enhancing it myself. That's just because I've always been a proponent of that over enhancing. Always been a better for me to just have fun with the game and go at my own pace rather than trying to absolute top of the gear score rankings rather than.
Thank you. Normally, at the end of this question, we are asking about Succession and Awakening, but we know that maybe our viewers do not know. Shai's skill build is a little bit different. May you please also explain how your skill build is working? And also, it's about the difficulty of the class.
Yeah, so Shai is a pretty newbie-friendly class. I'd say if you were just starting out and playing pretty chill, it's about a 4 on the difficulty scale out of 10. You can play it pretty simple and really only use 1 or 2 skills for attacking the mobs. You do have to manage your Shai talent buffs, but since they got increased from 60 seconds of buff timer, it is a lot easier to manage that, or you only have to really do it every now and then rather than constantly how it used to be every 30 seconds. But yeah, there is only one stance for Shai, which is using our Flooring, which is the main hand weapon for our attacking skills, our Artina's Soul, which is the weapon that takes place of the Awakening weapon. It is considered a talent weapon. 100% of our offensive damage comes from the Flooring. Having the Soul upgraded benefits a few of the talent buffs, but it has no effect on the actual damage of your main hand skills, depending on the enhancement of the Soul.
Thank you. So we talk in general about a Shai. Let's dive in. We are curious about your thoughts on the PvE situation of the class you're playing, I mean Shai. Could you provide us with a detailed information separately for early, mid, and end game? How is Shai in PvE?
So early game for Shai can be a bit rough just due to the low mobility from pack to pack grinding, one-shot pack grinding, which is basically every early game grind zone. Thankfully, with the seasonal characters, it's become easier to get through this gearing up point. Some of the really okay spots that Shai can grind are like Desert Fogans or Blood Wolves, Crescent Shrine, or Gaha's Bandits, the places that do have pretty high density. It makes it a little easier, but it's still pack-to-pack grinding, so you do tend to lag behind what other classes are capable of. Some really good early game grind spots would actually be Murmok Ruins or Trader's Graveyard. So Murmok is a pretty stationary grind zone. Same thing with Trader's Graveyard, which is you basically just attack a graveyard stone and then the mobs all spawn and come to you. That's where Shai is kind of the best, like all throughout the PvE grinding situation. Mid-game is where Shai starts to see some pretty good improvements, where the grind zones have more dense groupings and some more stationary zones are available. Like Jade Starlight Forest, for instance, is pretty solid mid-game grind zone for Shai. Same thing with Marowak's Labyrinth, the Rudums in Elvia Caltheon. The Stars and Towers is also another really solid spot for Shai. Some of the more mobile spots that Shai does pretty good at are the Swamp Fogans in Elvia Serendia, the Swamp Nagas, same place, Serendia, Elvia. And if you are able to find a duo partner, Tunkuda in Odolita is a pretty solid spot as well. For endgame is where Shai really starts to shine, particularly because a lot of those zones start becoming almost completely stationary. So like any of the new Dekia grind zones, Shai does pretty well at those. You got Userhead Highlands, same thing, very stationary. You're in one spot and just killing a bunch of mobs. Quint Hill is also a very solid place in Elvia Caltheon. Both normal and Dekia, Olin's Valley, also just a very, very strong spot. Any group content for PvE, so like Olin's Valley or the dungeon Upper Gyfins, Shai does very well there as well. There are a few spots that Shai can do okay at, as well as spots that Shai is just flat out bad. So like, for instance, Tungrad's Ruins currently is, before the update goes through from the most recent or one of the most recent global labs, Shai's just cannot simply do anywhere as well as some other classes can. The most that I've been able to do is like 10,000 or 12,000 trash less than some of the meta grinders on a yellow loot scroll. It's insane how much of a disparity there is. If you stick with the niche spots that Shai do particularly well at, she's great. And so you just got to know which spots to avoid.
Thank you. So let's talk about PvP. The class is a little bit different than the other classes, the design. I wonder what you're going to say about this PvP question. We are curious about your thoughts on the PvP situation of Shai. Could you provide us with a detailed information separately? How is Shai on 1v1, 1vx, AOS, 5v5, Guild League, Siege, War of the Roses?
Sure. So PvP on Shai varies pretty wildly depending on the type that you are participating in. For example, most 1v1 situations, Shai simply can't keep up with other classes when on equal gearing compared to other classes where, like, even if you're good enough and have lower gear, some of the classes are still able to punch up and still make those plays to defeat the opponent. Shai's just not really able to do that. We have very poor PvP modifiers on our skills and just the PvP percentages to other classes. It's just not very strong. That's not to say that it's not possible, but it is just much, much more difficult than it should be, honestly. 1vx is basically impossible. If you have two people attacking you that are on even just slightly less gear than you are as a Shai, even then it's basically not feasible unless you get a lucky catch from a CC. Group content though, so even small scale or Node Wars or Guild League or AOS or Siege, any of those, Shai's really, really strong. Specifically for like AOS, Shai's kind of broken, honestly, but that's where we shine the most, and where like pretty much we only shine is when doing the group content. So any small scale stuff like AOS, we are just very, very strong. For AOS specifically, gearing up, play with as much DP as possible, because you're mainly focusing on disruption and distraction and interruption of the enemies to allow your allies to get those kills. That giving buffs to your allies makes that much easier. That all makes sense. That same situation is kind of the same for any of the uncapped scenarios. So like Guild League, uncapped Node Wars, or Sieges, a full DP gear is what you should be wearing, which is just full stacking on evasion as much as you can. That really makes surviving and being able to provide those opportunities for your allies that much easier. For capped Node Wars and Sieges, you're playing more of a backline support rather than upfront ball disruption. That's not to say that it's not possible, but it is a lot more difficult because you can just die so much faster, because our main crowd control skill, which is called Forced Echo, it keeps us stationary, or pretty stationary if you use one of the skills in the kit that lets you walk around a little bit, but it's still a very stationary skill. So you can die pretty quick if you're not defensively capable of surviving. As far as War of the Roses goes, I actually can't really comment on that because I've not been able to participate in it yet. First week I didn't get chosen, and then the remaining 3 before they temporarily stopped it in NA and EU, I was not available. I was not in town, or wasn't able to play.
I mean, I don't think it will be different than Northern Siege. Your role probably will be same. Be support, I mean, your bubble and etc. There will be no big change, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine there would be. Only just, I guess, starting out, you would stay with like a PvE full AP set, because you're not going to be interacting with the enemies up until a certain point where both teams start actually fighting. So being able to help out with at least the initial taking of the different nodes process is going to be good. But having both sets available is a good option, good way to go.
Thank you. Is there a significant strong aspect of the class you're playing, or significant weakness? What is the strongest thing? What is the weakest thing in Shai?
Group content by far is the strongest aspect of Shai. I don't think anyone can argue against that. It's basically any group content, you should try and have a Shai. The buffs that we are able to provide are just game changing in both PvE and PvP content. Any PvE situation where you're in a group grind zone and you don't have a Shai, you're basically just reducing the amount of trash you're able to get by like 20% at least. Like it's a crazy difference. We're able to provide 25% attack speed, BSR regeneration. We're able to provide just CC resistances, which is huge in a lot of the more difficult zones, where if you get caught by a CC, you can die pretty quick, which is never fun. And then we're also able to provide 30 AP to the party twice. One from one of our leaf buff, what we call the leaf buff, which is like a charging buff that we're able to provide, as well as our E buff, which is another 30 AP that stacks on top of that, and as well as stacks on top of other class AP buffs. So it is a very strong class to have when in a group content scenario. Her weakness, though, is her low mobility. So like pack-to-pack grinding, like I said, it's not very strong. You go through it's not a very mobile class. She's also bad at 1v1 scenarios for PvP. Just the bad PvP modifiers just makes it a very difficult situation to be in.
Thank you. I mean, this question might be a little bit different for this class, but I will try to ask it. Are there any classes that really dominate your class, or are there any classes that your class dominates them easily to counter matchups? Is there anything like in Shai?
Most classes are able to kill Shai pretty easily in 1v1 situations, especially on equal footing. Particularly bad ones are classes that have very, very super armor combos or iframe combos. So like Sorceress, Succession, Corsair, those are particularly impossible for us to deal with, or at least in my situations, in my experiences, I've had basically zero luck when it comes to dealing with those classes. Same thing with a Megu. It's just extremely difficult. As far as other classes that we can do okay in, I've been able to manage against like Awakened Berserker or Succession Berserker sometimes if you get a catch. Wizards, Rangers I can do okay at, but overall it's most of the time not a situation that I try and be in because I know it's a very hard uphill battle.
Thank you. Is there a mechanic or skill in your class that you would like to be buffed or nerfed?
Yes. So Shai has never had combat passive, which is very unfortunate because the passive that we do have was only really helpful for like half a year, maybe at the start when the class was released initially. Basically, the current passive that we have gives us 300% combat EXP when life skilling, which does basically nothing once you get past like 56-ish. Level 56. And then we also have life skill passive of starting at professional 10, gathering, and alchemy, I believe, which nowadays basically does nothing because it's all your life skill levels are family wide. So I'm pretty sure that passive does literally nothing now. So a combat passive would be huge. It doesn't even matter what kind of combat passive, honestly. It could be a defensive one where it gives us like 5%, 6% evasion passive, or a DR passive, or an AP passive. It doesn't really matter. Just anything would be great. As far as any nerfs, honestly, if they would make Shai capable of dealing more damage in PvP situations where we could stop relying so heavily on a DP set, some of our buffs could be toned down for the group content. So like either reduce the time back down to 30 seconds for the buff timers. That would be fine. Honestly, them adding it up to 60 seconds was kind of insane. Like I don't think anyone was expecting that, honestly. Like it is a crazy difference. Like 1 minute is a long time in a combat situation for PvP.
Thank you. I want to see something on Shai if developers watch this video. Especially while we're running at Olons, for example, Shai is mandatory. For example, when you dash, if Shai gives the special buffs to her teammates, and teammates dash or PV iframe or iframe, the buffs are not activating on the teammates, by the way. I want to see that those buffs should work even if my teammates in iframe or not in iframe. In all situations, it should work.
That is a very good point. Yeah, that is something that would be nice to get fixed. But that's sort of something that doesn't only affect Shai buffs. Other buffs that other classes can provide. So like the sorceress, for instance, has that 20 AP buff. The same kind of thing happens if she pops that, and another class iframes, they also miss that out on that. But yeah, that in general, that situation could be fixed. That would be nice.
We talked about it in general, and we need a summary. Can we get a brief summary of a good and bad things in your class? For example, let's say that I want to play Shai. What Shai can offer me? What should I expect from Shai?
So if you do decide to play Shai, know that it is a very sought after class for pretty much every kind of group content. So if you are willing to stick to it and you like the style of gameplay, you will pretty much always have a spot in PvP guild or in any PvE group content. It is a very unique style of play for all types of content. We're doing a lot of buff management, active choosing on skill attacks, micromanagement of positioning for PvE and PvP. It can be a very fun class of play. That being said, it's not for everyone. Not everyone likes that kind of style. A good or bad Shai can make or break a group cohesion for any given situation.
Thank you. So we talked in general about Shai. Let's talk about game itself. What are your thoughts in BDO's current situation from past until now?
Overall, I think Black Desert has come a long way from where it used to be. It's a lot more new player friendly. There's been a ton of new content for everyone to enjoy and new content constantly being developed. Honestly, I wish that they would focus a bit more on the PvP side of things because they've really sort of backed away from that in the recent year or so, where they're really making it less and less enjoyable for PvP players. We have a very large PvP community, but they have slowly been kind of whittling away at it in both open world and in the node wars and sieges. They've been trying to introduce new PvP content, but it hasn't really well with everyone. And I mean, realistically, the PvP scene is kind of fading, which is really unfortunate because that's part of what I find the most fun about the game is being able to participate in those really large scale fights. But in general, though, the game has drastically improved. Like I said, it is more new player friendly. The seasonal content is very good for getting new players caught up to a pretty good mid game spot. But yeah, overall, it's been a good few recent years in terms of all the updates. If there is one specific thing though that I would like for them to focus on, it would be class balancing. Getting better class balancing across the board would be very nice.
Thank you. What do you think PA Company does well and bad? You already talked about them in general, but this question is a little bit special for you. If you were in charge, let's say that you are a new Mr. J, what would you like to add and remove today in the game? One thing to add, one thing to remove.
That is a tough question. What I think Probus does really well is interaction with the community in the terms of the game masters and the community masters, the CMs and GMs. They are constantly interacting with the community, which is super cool. Yeah, I've really liked that aspect of it, where they're always talking with people in game. They're always providing events, even in real life, TwitchCon or different Oasis events, or putting on the Heidel balls or the Calpheon balls. Those are really awesome, and that's something that people look forward to all the time. That is something that they really do well. They could improve on getting updates pushed out faster, but then that's kind of a double-edged sword because you don't want them to rush things and everything to be broken before they get it out, but you also don't want it to take as long as it sometimes does in order to get the new content. So it's a balancing act that has to be done there. If I had one choice on what they should focus on, again, it would come back to the class balancing. That's just something that I think is so crucial because some classes really struggle in a lot of different content, while some other classes are just way over the top, leaning towards broken when it comes to like what they're capable of. So like Dracania, for instance, Awakening Dracania is really strong in PvP. More recently, Archers and Rangers are really strong in PvP, while there's classes like Shai, for instance, that in an offensive capability is not strong at all. Yeah, so like, yeah, class balancing in general would be the one thing I would say to focus on.
Thank you. What advice would you like to give to newbies, returnees, and the other players in the game?
I think it would be similar to what I had told you the last time we did this interview, which is BDO is a game. You gotta have fun with it. It is more important to have fun and maybe take a little bit longer to gear up than to rush through everything and just burn yourself out. If you ever get confused or you're lost, there are so many guides and walkthroughs that you can find online through YouTube or forums or the class discords. Just don't rush and play a game that you don't enjoy.
Thank you. We are reaching the end of the interview. Is there anything else you would like to add before we finish?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. I just mainly want to thank you for having me for this interview again. It was a great time. Thank you.
I want to thank Alec. Alec has just gave tons of experience, full information. They're definitely priceless because you cannot find those information randomly in any video. In BDO, experience is the power. Experience is everything. And all the class masters sharing their experiences. You're seeing me, amigos, my dear friends Alex, social links in the screen right now. Please check his Twitch stream because he's streaming almost every day. He's streaming about he's helping people about Shai, about game itself while he's on Twitch. Please check his links. Please check his Twitch and click that follow button. Thank you, Alec.
Absolutely.
Alright guys, do not forget, video is just a game. Have a nice game.